Right now.
And we begin with the Fox News alert. The White House pushing back against reports targeting the president's son-in-law. Hello, everybody. I'm Jenna Lee.
And I'm John Scott. President Trump calls allegations of improper communication between Jared Kushner and Russian authorities fake news. Sources tell Fox News it wasn't Kushner who requested back-channel communications with the Russians. It was the other way around.
In the meantime, a staff shakeup at the White House. Press Secretary Sean Spicer is scheduled to hold the daily news briefing at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and there's going to be a lot of questions about who's in and who's out. Kevin Corke joins us live from the White House with the wrap-up on that and more. Kevin?
Hey there, Jenna. Good day to you. And you're right. Listen, the president has made it clear once again his, well, let's just say his not-so-subtle disdain for what he likes to call the fake media, taking to Twitter once again to issue more criticism about this notion that there's somehow some ties between the Trump White House and Russia. Here we go again, right? Okay, this is the tweet. Russian officials must be laughing at the U.S. and how a lame excuse for why the Democrats lost the election has taken over the fake news. The latest, of course, after suggestions that his son-in-law and advisor, Jared Kushner, is under scrutiny for allegedly wanting to establish some back-channel communications with Russia after the election. White House officials say that's a fairly common practice.
Back channels like this are the regular course of business, and that's really all that we know. And I think it's very important to recognize that the president has expressed full confidence in Jared Kushner and also went on to note the considerable progress and very large, important portfolio that Jared oversees.
My view of it is I don't like it. I just don't. I know that some administration officials are saying, well, that's standard procedure. I don't think it's standard procedure prior to the inauguration of a president of the United States by someone who is not in an appointed position.
Boy, I would love to share some of the conversations that you have off the record and the look of incredulity sometimes that you get from officials when you hear others on the other side making criticisms. It's actually kind of fun. Meanwhile, drama continues here at the White House. Mike Dubke out as communications director after just 3 months on the job. And this is an interesting story because some have suggested that it's because of the president's frustration over his team's lack of consistent pushback against the constant barrage of stories suggesting ties between the Trump campaign and Russia, none of which have been proven, at least not yet. As for the letter that we got today, here's what Dubke told colleagues. Look, in a private meeting with the president on Thursday, May 18th, I tendered my resignation as assistant to the president for communications. I offered to remain in the position through the president's international trip, and he accepted. The reasons for my departure are personal, but it has been my great honor to serve President Trump in this administration. And just for a bit of perspective, I want to share this with everybody. Keep in mind, it was the Obama administration's first communications director, Ellen Moran. Remember her? She also stepped down from the job after just 3 months on the job. She ultimately ended up as a chief of staff over at Commerce. So this is sometimes what happens during the first administration here at the White House. Jenna?
Some important context for us, Kevin. Thank you.
Meantime, counselor to the president Kellyanne Conway says all the intrigue about the White House staff is getting a little old.
I went back and looked at some of my notes. The very first time I was ever asked about somebody being pushed out of the White House was January 23rd. We had been here for 3 whole days. And so there's been a story a minute about that. It's easier to cover that than, I guess, learning the finer points of health care reform and tax reform and infrastructure and ISIS in retreat. In terms of, quote, staff shakeups, you know, I always read things that simply aren't true. I work here every day. It's much more collaborative than people realize. I think that we're constantly being told by people who have never worked in any White House, let alone this White House, exactly what's going on here.
So let's talk about all of this with Al Weaver, political reporter for the Washington Examiner, and Bob Cusack, editor-in-chief of The Hill. Thanks for being with us. Al, Mike Dubke, in submitting his resignation, says it's for personal reasons. Is there a translation that goes with that?
Well, Mike Dubke had a few issues coming into the White House. And the first one is that he wasn't part of any real faction within the White House. He wasn't within the Republican National Committee sphere, which is led by Reince Priebus. And he wasn't a real loyalist in the sense, you know, where Kellyanne Conway and Steve Bannon. So he didn't really fit any of those molds. So he had issues in that coming in. And you know, you talk about the loyalists. You have Corey Lewandowski, former campaign manager, who met with the president yesterday, along with David Bossie, former Citizens United head, and former deputy campaign manager. So, it might be a return to the early campaign days for President Trump if he gets his way with Lewandowski and Bossie.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, Bob, that those two in particular are apparently making a comeback now to the White House.
Yeah. Trump is clearly comfortable with him, has known him for quite some time. And I think the bottom line here with Dubke is that the president wasn't happy with the communication shop. He gave it a C or C+ grade. And I think that's going to be this is just the beginning of changes to how this White House communicates its message. The president knows that it's not working. So something had to be done, something had to be changed, and whether that's changes to the White House press briefings or Trump going on the road. He enjoys doing that. Trump has to be the focus of the messaging, and I think he's going to take a more active role in it.
Al, I was about to ask, does this president even need a communications shop?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the other week he said that you can't listen to anything my press secretaries say because, what I say is final. And you saw that in the campaign. I mean, that was the key when Lewandowski was running the ship, is that everything, he let Trump be Trump. And, everything, he said was final. You're seeing that now kind of in talk that he may be taking more trips and maybe briefing the press more often. It's a strategy that I think, some communications people in the White House probably wouldn't mind.
Does that suggest, Bob, that the president is very happy with this this overseas trip that he just concluded?
Well, I think it was a good trip for the president, but the trick is now he's going to have to parlay that into momentum at home, and that's on health care and tax reform. The president seems to be getting a little frustrated with the pace of how Congress works, and especially the Senate, now that they've got to do Obamacare repeal and replace. So, overall, I think this president is going to be pushing members of his own party to giddy up on getting things done. So it was a good trip for the president, but he has to get something big accomplished over the next month, 2 months.
Let's talk about health care and the tax code. Al, the president got some good news from the Congressional Budget Office last week.
He did. The report came out, said that it would get $119 billion in cutting the deficit. But right now, I mean, look at healthcare, for example. It's really stalled out in the Senate right now. I mean, they need 50 votes to get it through. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, he's pushing his members to get it through, but he's not really sure he can get the 51 votes. He said last week in an interview with Reuters that he's not sure he can, or that it's going to be a tough road to hoe. So, I mean, there's issues with healthcare and then the tax code. I mean, obviously, they haven't, the tax code hasn't been reformed since 1986 with President Reagan. So that's going to be also a challenge for them.
And it seems like after all of the tension involved in getting health care out of the House, Bob, that now, things have stalled in the Senate and there's not a lot of love between Republicans in the two chambers.
No. House Republicans are already getting frustrated with their Senate counterparts. The Senate health care bill is going to be so dramatically different from what the House passed. So can they get it through the Senate? I mean, it's possible. I don't know how they marry the two. They're going to be two very, very different bills. And Republicans have to decide, do we need health care to go first to get tax reform done? Logistically, there are reasons why. But at some point, I think they're going to have to move on to tax reform if they can't get the 50 votes. The one thing that is interesting, and I think is going to happen here, is that usually bills that don't have the votes in the Senate, they just don't bring them up for a vote. I think that Mitch McConnell is going to bring up a bill so it either passes or it doesn't, and they move on.
Wow. It's going to be fascinating times ahead in that chamber. Bob Cusack from The Hill, Al Weaver from the Washington Examiner. Thank you both.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Redman.
Yet another missile test from North Korea. The rogue regime launching a Scud-style missile once again defying the international community, but the U.S. military responding today with the test of its own. We're live at the test site with more on that. Plus, we catch up with retired U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Travis Mills 5 years after he first shared his story with us on Happening Now. An update on the reach of his inspiring message of never give up, never quit.
Stock price.
A Fox News alert and the Pentagon set to test a missile defense system today. The test comes one day after this, North Korea's 9th missile test of 2017. Today's test will be our military's first attempt at intercepting an ICBM, similar to the one North Korea is developing. Jonathan Hunt live at the site of that test that will occur later today, Vandenberg Air Force Base in California. Jonathan.
John, this is a critical test of a system that has only been successful 50% of the time in past tests, and it has never been tested against an intercontinental ballistic missile. This is what will happen today. Sometime between noon and 4:14 Pacific, the U.S. will launch an ICBM from the Marshall Islands in the Pacific Ocean. A few minutes after that, they will launch the interceptor missile from here at Vandenberg Air Force Base. They hope that the kill vehicle from that missile, essentially a 5-foot-long high-tech chunk of metal, will strike the ICBM high over the Pacific up in space and destroy it. But given that that ICBM will be traveling at around 16,000 miles per hour, it's no easy task, as Admiral Searing of the Missile Defense Agency told us in an exclusive interview. Listen here.
It's very difficult. We're talking about intercepting in space at hundreds of miles of altitude with closing velocities of thousands of miles per hour. It's hitting a bullet with a bullet.
Now, the need for success has been made far more urgent by North Korea's spate of recent missile launches and the new threat from Kim Jong-un to deliver what he called a bigger gift package to the United States. Now, ahead of this test, we got an exclusive look at Fort Greely, Alaska, where the vast majority of the U.S. interceptor missiles are based. And the colonel there, who commands the 49th Missile Defense Battalion, Colonel Tim Brower, told us that they are in good shape. They simulate these kind of attacks every day of every week. Listen here.
Very confident in the ground-based interceptors and the technology that we have. But again, if we're talking about a nuclear warhead headed to LA, we want to make sure that we get it.
A nuclear warhead headed towards LA. In that case, it is, as they say, a no-fail mission. So this test today is absolutely critical for the safety of the United States, John.
Go Air Force. That's what we say. Thanks very much, Jonathan Hunt.
For more on this, we're joined by Admiral Robert Natter. He's a retired Navy 4-star admiral and former commander of the United States 7th Fleet, so very familiar with the part of the world, of course, around North Korea. Admiral, it's nice to have you back on our program. Obviously, we've seen these tests conducted by North Korea over the last several weeks, which brings up the question as we watch our own test. How safe are we defending against these missiles from North Korea?
Well, first of all, the missiles that North Korea has been firing, we've seen before. They don't represent in any way intercontinental ballistic missiles. The Scud that they recently fired is 20-year-old technology. They've been upgraded, of course, but again, these are not long-range missiles, and they don't represent a threat to the continental United States at all.
Does that mean you're not particularly worried about North Korea and their capacity in the future?
No, I'm absolutely worried, and I think that we and the rest of the civilized nations of the world have got to take a stand and prevent them from developing an ICBM capability and a nuclear weapons capability, whether it's short range or medium range.
So prevention and defense can go one and the same, but they can be separate. So let's just take one of those two things. First of all, when we look at the coast of our nation, down the California coast, Washington, California, Oregon, how safe are we? How are we able to defend against incoming missiles of whatever capability?
We're safe today. The concern is the technology that's being developed by some of our adversaries and potential adversaries. And we've got to continue to invest, like Admiral Searing talked about with the Missile Defense Agency, in order to maintain our technological edge.
It's that description of hitting a bullet with a bullet really hit home with me from Jonathan's report. Based on your experience, is that what we're trying to do to intercept a missile? Is that an accurate assessment of how challenging it is?
It certainly is an accurate description. We've been conducting these tests over the years, and we've learned something from every one of the tests, whether they were hits or misses. In fact, one could argue that we learn more from a miss because we continue to upgrade and improve the technologies and we will prevail in this effort.
How good are we at that?
Well, we're the best in the world. There are many different kinds of threats that we've got to face out there, and we can defend against them from ships at sea. Our Aegis systems aboard our destroyers and cruisers is very effective against intermediate range threats. We've got land-based systems in Europe and in Alaska. So we are staying ahead of the technological threat, and we've got to continue to do that, because if we stop investing in conducting these kinds of tests, then we're just going to walk away from the need for defending ourselves.
Right, a less promising scenario. It is reassuring, and we appreciate that, Admiral, just to realize where do we have assets, how good are we. We want to kind of talk about that as candidly as we can, so we make sure that we stay up to date with the tests that you just mentioned. Let me just quickly finish up on this. We mentioned our defense, but let's talk about prevention. You spent a great deal of time in this part of the world around North Korea. What is key to prevention, to making sure that they never get the missiles that could do us harm here at the homeland?
Well, first of all, I think we need to continue working closely with China. China has a vested interest in a non-nuclear North Korean peninsula. And so I think we, along with China and other nations who are selling this kind of technology to North Korea, have got to say enough. We've got to tighten up on the sanctions. They're too loose right now. And we've got to cut off the cash flow to North Korea in order to do that.
Admiral, it's great to have you in the program. Appreciate your expertise and look forward to having you back. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna Lee.
A Fox News alert, and the show must go on. American pop star Ariana Grande will play a charity concert this coming Sunday for victims of last Monday's concert homicide bombing in Manchester, England. That's according to a report citing her publicist. She announced Friday on Twitter she will be heading back to Manchester for a show to pay tribute to the victims and the city. Of course, 22 people died in that terrible bombing. It seems it will happen on Sunday. The venue has not yet been announced. Well, Tiger Woods back in the news, and not in a positive way, but now he's giving his side of the story after his arrest for driving under the influence. There's also this. Punches thrown in the legislative offices. Texas lives up to its Wild West roots. Lawmakers nearly coming to blows on the floor of the House. So what drove these elected officials to the brink of combat? Up next.
Dessert is
all kinds of chaos in the Texas State House yesterday, Memorial Day, but also closing day of the Texas legislative session. A lot of those folks, especially in the red shirts, are activists out in force protesting SB 4, the Texas bill signed into law this month that requires police in so-called sanctuary cities to enforce federal immigration law. But the real action was on the floor, where lawmakers nearly came to blows, one even accused of threatening to shoot a colleague. Casey Stiegel has more from our Dallas bureau. Casey.
John, we could not make this stuff up, I promise you that. You know, when you look at this video, it really is difficult to make out what exactly happened. We can tell you that things escalated pretty quickly, which you can see for yourself, and then fellow lawmakers had to jump in to break this thing up. After everybody cooled off, the players had varying accounts of how it all went down. The scuffle reportedly started after Republican State Rep Matt Rinaldi told colleagues that he called federal immigration officers on those protesters who converged on the state Capitol building. He says many were holding signs saying that they were in the country illegally, so he called. Now, when word spread about that alleged phone call, many colleagues were reportedly irate and began shouting, even though ICE says it was never contacted. Now, Congressman Rinaldi admits his behavior was to get a rise out of people.
You say things to incite people, okay? And that's exactly what I did.
That's exactly what he did, he says. Meantime, Democrat State Congressman Pancho Navarez claims in the heat of the moment, Congressman Rinaldi threatened him with a gun, and others claim to have heard it too.
That's personal. And
you heard him say, I'm going to what? I'm going to put a bullet.
I'll put a bullet in your head.
Said that to the resident.
In his direction.
Now, Rinaldi later admitted to making this remark and says, however, that he would only shoot in self-defense. An investigation now into this incident has been launched. John, it's unclear if any of these lawmakers will face any kind of disciplinary action here for the outburst yesterday. Back to you.
Everything's bigger in Texas, including the legislative battles, right, Casey? All right.
You got it, John. You said it well.
Coming up on the second hour of Happening Now, we will dig a bit deeper into this story with our legal panel.
Well, 2 men killed on a commuter train after reportedly shielding 2 women from anti-Muslim abuse. Now new reaction out of Oregon as we await the suspect's first court appearance. And the inspiring Army Staff Sergeant we first met on Happening Now 5 years ago after he became one of the few U.S. vets to survive after losing all 4 limbs. The latest on his recovery ahead.
I was doing the same work every other guy over there is doing, and I was unfortunate to set my bag down on the wrong spot. My daughter's going to grow up and she's going to know I'm a fighter, and she's going to see that you can get through things.
A Fox News alert, we are awaiting Portland, Oregon train stabbing suspect Jeremy Christian to make his first court appearance today on multiple charges, including felony aggravated murder and attempted murder. He's accused of going on an anti-Muslim tirade against 2 teenage girls last week on a light rail train. One of the girls was wearing a hijab, the traditional Muslim head covering. Police say when 3 men tried to intervene, Christian stabbed them, killing 2. The 3rd man is still recovering. The city's mayor, Ted Wheeler, says he hopes the slayings will inspire, quote, changes in the political dialogue in this country.
Well, Happening Now, an update on a story we first brought you 5 years ago. On that day, it was our first time speaking to Staff Sergeant Travis Mills. Travis, a young leader in the 82nd Airborne on his 3rd deployment to Afghanistan, was injured while on patrol. And he lost both arms and both legs, making him one of the few surviving quadruple amputees of our wars. On May 30th, 2012, 6 weeks after his injury, we spoke to Travis by phone from Walter Reed, and here's how he described what happened to him.
I wish I didn't have a case of the Mondays on April 10th, and had a bad day at work, but every now and then people have bad days at work, and my bad day at work had me come back to the States, and I still have my moneymaker. I didn't get hit in the face, so.
And from that time on, we followed Travis's recovery along with his wife, Kelsey, and his young daughter, Chloe. He spent 19 months at Walter Reed and went from being bound to a wheelchair to walking, to then running, and even beyond that. In the last 5 years, Travis has exceeded expectations at every turn, from starting his own business to inspiring others, writing a best-selling book. And he has some family news as well. Joining us now on set, retired Army Staff Sergeant Travis Mills. 5 years.
I know. It seems like it flew by.
Right?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, though.
It's great to have you back.
Absolutely.
I don't want to bury the lead because I think the most important news is the special delivery you're expecting in August.
My wife is pregnant with a little boy, which is exciting, and we can't be more happy about the ability to have a kid and bring one more up. We have Chloe already, and she was upset that it was going to be a boy, but then she found out she was going to be the only princess, and she was okay with it.
Okay, and Chloe, we were seeing some video of you guys together at Walter Reed. What is it like to hear your interview 5 years ago to the day? Do you still think of what happened in Afghanistan as a bad day at work?
I go around, I travel and I speak, and I'm very fortunate to have crowds and things like that, and I get to tell them life lessons I've learned. And I've learned that, you know what, why dwell on the past? I can't change what happened. I can't fix the fact that I have no arms and legs, so I might as well reminisce what I had and just look forward and keep pressing on with life. So I don't think about the day that it happened. I don't think about how bad it was. I drive. I take my wife on dates. My daughter, tomorrow night's date night for my daughter and I. And life is good.
What is date night like with Chloe?
Well, it's usually Thai food, or
really?
Yes, or cinnamon butter at Texas Roadhouse, and it's just like a toss-up. But we have a great time with it, and I'm excited to still be around and able to drive. I'm an awful driver, though.
Really?
Yeah,
you've offered to drive me a few different times, so I should say no to that.
Well, it's up to you.
I think I'll probably have to say yes one of these days. You know, I was looking back on your website because I was reminded again, one of the great things about your family is they had set up this website when you first got injured, and that's how I learned about your story initially. But now when you look at your website, it's a completely different operation. So I want to go through a few of the additions that you've added to the website over the last couple of years. So one of the tabs is speaking. So tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I travel the nation. I'm a motivational speaker now. I spoke to Lockheed Martin and Microsoft and things like that. And I'll actually be in New Jersey next week. I just got back from Lubbock, Texas, speaking to a dental conference. And I get to go in there and tell them, hey, life goes on. Never give up, never quit. I have a lot more jokes than they see coming. But I get to travel around. I do quite a bit. I'm with Random House Speakers Bureau, and it's really fun for me.
I bet it is. I bet you're really good at it.
I'm decent, I think, yeah.
I bet you're pretty good. What about the foundation? That's another tab on your website.
Oh, so the foundation started, and I thank you for bringing it up, it started just to give care packages overseas. Kelsey and I wanted to give back. And then we decided to have people come up to Maine, where I live at, and give them a free week with them and their families to do anything they want outdoors and really have a network of people out there and let them know never give up and never quit. We're 100% donation based. I'm the president of the foundation, 6 board members, my wife included is one of them, and we don't take a dime. We've been fortunate to raise $1.5 million last year, on track to beat that this year. And we hosted a 5K yesterday in Augusta. Over 750 people came, signed up, registered, and raised over $45,000 just yesterday alone. And these families come from all across the nation. We do sponsorships. If everyone's getting involved, check the website out. It's really great.
And it's the official camp opening is in a few weeks, right? And that's it. I love this little fact about it. It's the former Elizabeth Arden estate.
Former Elizabeth Arden estate, cosmetic pioneer and everything. And
I'll take it.
And it's been all redone. It's going to be June 25th at 2 p.m. Everybody's invited, but really anybody out there can either sponsor a family. We bring them out from across the nation. We build a network and say, hey, life goes on. And we have bigger plans to partner with some PTSD and TBI specialists that can really cure it and use our facility as well. This facility is all about the veterans and giving back.
So there's the whole concept of any family can go to camp, and so these families in particular have a way to go to camp, enjoy the outdoors, and not feel like they have to be in a special place with special people to be able to just live like a regular family. This is part of the site, isn't it?
This was a former site that we used, and now we're under this massive renovation. It all closes up. We get 7 weeks this year with 8 families per week, so 56 families from across the nation are coming. No charge to them, and we just show them how to do things adaptively: kayak, canoe, boat, swim, fish, tube, whatever they want. And we let them know there's a network out there that they can reach out to, that they're not alone, no matter if they're in the big city of New York or if they're in a little town in Maine like me, that there's people like them. The wives can talk to each other, the husbands, the kids, and it's just going to be a great, great time.
The wives can talk to each other. That sounds like trouble.
Yeah, well, my wife's on a text chain with like 5 of her best friends from Walter Reed. They talk about everything from the news of the pregnancy to what shoes to wear to this event to anything in between.
All the important stuff.
Yeah.
I clearly can understand that. Talk to me a little bit about the movie and the book. I'm going to put those 2 tabs together again from your website because you have big news on that as well.
Well, we're in talks right now with Fox Searchlight Films, and there's a possible motion picture going to be done. Sylvester Stallone's going to probably direct it, so it'll be a Rocky style feel. It'll be fun and exciting. But we have our Netflix documentary just hit Netflix May 1st. It's called Travis Soldier Story. If you type in Travis and search, it comes up, and it's doing very well, getting positive feedback.
So people can watch a little bit more about your story on Netflix. Yeah. You're a Netflix star.
I mean, I'm doing my best.
Well, right. Can you think, just thinking back over the last 5 years, is this what you imagined for yourself at this point?
No. When I talked to you last time, I just had a discussion with my wife probably 2 weeks or 3 weeks before that, saying, look, take Chloe. Why don't you just go ahead and have the house, sell the house, take the money in the account. This is not the burden that you want to do or to put up with. And she was like, that's not how this works. We're going to get through this together. And just kind of through meeting wonderful people, you know the Norrises, Reese and Katie, who did the documentary and helped me get my book deal for, Tough As They Come, which hit the New York Times bestsellers list and things like that. It's just, and then the foundation, we've hired some wonderful people at the foundation that help us just every day keep pushing forward. And I'm just so grateful to have the opportunity that I have to live in such a great place. Look at this. Still got that trick.
You do have that trick. And you do it every single time you come in.
It never gets old.
And people are like, can I laugh about that? I'm not sure, which actually leads me to the final question. I'm sure you've been asked over the years, well, what's the biggest challenge you've been through? What's the biggest obstacle you've overcome? I'd actually like to ask you, what do you think is still the biggest misconception? When you walk into a room and you're dealing with how people feel about you and their instant reaction, what is that like, and what would you like our viewers to know?
I'm a regular everyday guy. I'm thankful that people take such interest in me. I have a lot of little kids like, what happened to his legs, Mommy? And the mom and dad are like, shh. But for me, it's more about awareness. I'm just like, hey, what's up? I work with Iron Man. This one, full of missiles. Can't wear it in public, so I have to leave it at home. And then, you know, I think people probably see me and pity me right away, and that's fine because I get it. But once they meet me, hopefully they realize I have a couple more steps in the morning. My legs go on, but first my pants go on, then my legs, I guess, and my arms. But I drive my daughter to school. I just recently purchased with a friend of mine a hotel marina. So we run that on a lake in Maine. If anyone wants to check that out, by all means. My parents moved from Michigan to run it for me, so I'm very excited.
So what do you think the next 5 years looks like?
You know, I don't really get into politics too much, but I could run for some local things and try to help give back to the community a little more. They've been so gracious and great to me. And besides for that, just hopefully endowing the foundation, bringing out families repeatedly every summer and then into the other months, and you know, continuing our friendship. I'm so excited.
Well,
I don't know if you know, you might be the
it's
MC.
debatable.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
June 25th, you might be the MC. I don't know if we talked about that
One of
yet.
the greatest things about that interview 5 years ago is it actually started a friendship between us that has continued to this day. And I love your family, and I love Kelsey so much. She's someone I look up to all the time as an amazing wife and a mom. And it's been a blessing. It's been a blessing to have you on this program and to be friends.
Well, thank you. And can I mention what today is?
Oh, gosh, I don't know.
So today is not only my father-in-law's birthday, but it's your birthday as well.
Right.
So, like, happy birthday to you.
He sings as well.
I mean, happy, yeah.
Okay, that's enough.
I'm sorry.
I'll just tell our viewers to check you out, travismills.org, right? They were and a big shout out to our viewers who have supported you along the way, and I know they're going to continue to do so.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. If anybody gets on Facebook, SSG, Travis Mills, share and like our page. It helps us so much.
Absolutely. Travis, great to see you.
Thank you. Great seeing you, too.
John?
Is the cabaret show coming next? I mean, Travis,
I mean, out of everything he's doing, you can see him adding something.
Yeah, I was working on it backstage.
Never give up, never quit. Good on you. On Capitol Hill, lawmakers already turning their attention to the midterm elections, and some big moves are in the works ahead. How Republican lawmakers are trying to lay the groundwork to keep their majority. Right now, the unofficial start of summer might be underway, but on Capitol Hill, many people are already looking forward to the fall of 2018 and the midterm elections. A headline in Politico caught our eye. Pence to make campaign push amid GOP concerns over Trump. Politico writes that the vice president is, quote, embarking on a cross-country summer campaign tour amid rising fears that the GOP, reeling from a barrage of Trump-fueled controversies, is heading for a midterm election disaster. So let's talk about those prospects with our panel. Mercedes Schlapp is a Fox News contributor, GOP strategist, and former spokesperson for President George W. Bush. David Goodfriend is former deputy secretary to President Clinton. Thanks, both of you, for being here.
Thank you.
Mercedes, is your party in trouble when it comes to the midterm elections?
You know, the GOP could be in trouble, but I think it's too early right now to make that call. Obviously, we've seen Vice President Pence already campaigning in the special elections out in Kansas and Montana, and you'll see him in Georgia, I'm sure. So this is something that is part of the job when you're the president. Now, here's the deal. For the GOP, it's very clear that they need to make sure that they have victories in Congress, that being the repeal and replacement of Obamacare, tax reform. And I think that there's an important piece of the puzzle that's very important, especially in those seats where Democrats might have won those congressional seats. There's about 12 of those in those swing districts, but President Trump won the presidency. And that's to ensure that President Trump and Vice President Pence keep talking about bringing jobs back to America, economic growth, seeing consumer confidence rise. Those are key components in their message, in talking about the economic message of really bringing back hope to America and jobs to America. That's something that these congressional candidates I think it's going to be an important message for them to deliver.
David, members of your party, the Democrats, have said that repealing and replacing Obamacare would be a huge mistake. So if Republicans manage to get that kind of bill through the House and the Senate and get it signed by the president, do you think that would actually reward Democrats next election?
Well, I think the 23 million Americans who rely on the health care reform law would be not in a mood to vote Republican, I guess, is one way to put it, if they had their health benefits taken away. And I think the CBO, the Congressional Budget Office, has now made it definitively clear that the House bill would do just that. The Senate may be something entirely different, but if I could just pick up on something that Mercy just said, it's really true that you have these districts that went for Hillary Clinton in this presidential cycle that just passed. My math is a little bit different than Mercy's. Mine is about 22 seats.
Well,
and those are Republicans
David,
who voted.
Real quick. There's
okay.
12 Democratic congressional seats where President Trump won, and then there's 23 where those are Republican seats where Hillary Clinton won. So I want to just clarify that.
Yeah, okay, so if we take just the 23 seats, as you say, that Republican House member now sits in, but that went for Hillary Clinton, those Republicans have a very steep hill to climb for two reasons. Number one, the usual trend of Republicans turning out more than Democrats during midterm probably is going to differ this time around, given how motivated the Democratic base is. But number two, you have unbelievably unpopular policy items coming out, not only the health care bill in the House, but the budget that just came out that would slash benefits for people in Trump country, in rural areas, in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, in places that you would think the Trump administration would want to favor. So I think this is a different formula this time around. We're going to see, maybe for the first time in a long time, the party out of, the party out of power in the White House doing extremely well in the midterm, better than historical patterns.
But Mercedes, Republicans typically do better in midterm elections, more organized perhaps, more ready to get out and vote. Do you see it as a problem this time around for Republicans?
Well, I think it's going to be a challenge. I think it's going to be, you got to look at it from each congressional seat. I think as David pointed out, there are those 23 swing districts where Hillary Clinton performed so well. And those, if you look at those individual congressional candidates or congressmen or incumbents, these are individuals who necessarily do not align themselves with President Trump. It's like the Carlos Curbelo in Florida. It's like Barbara Comstock in Virginia. They're critical of the president many times. So it depends who the Democrats are running against them. I think the biggest challenge for the Democrats is that if their only message is resistance, anti-Trump, and not really offering a solution, I think it's going to be difficult for the Democrats.
Yeah,
so
David?
I think it's going to be which party is the one that's going to provide the solutions, and really, and a lot of it is going to be based on a strong economic message.
But if I may just jump in real quick, we started this segment by talking about the Politico story about Mike Pence going on a sort of charm offensive. If I could pick one person who would not persuade swing voters right now, it would be Mike Pence. And part of me wonders, given the fact that he's also started, I think it was an exploratory committee or a PAC, part of me wonders whether Mike Pence isn't just looking out for Mike Pence. He sees the trouble that the president is in. A special prosecutor has been appointed.
Mike Pence,
I don't even know why.
I have to stop you right there. Mike Pence knows how to motivate the Republican base. And as you know, the midterm elections are those individuals, those grassroots. You're going to see it with the liberal base too. Those are the ones that usually go out and vote in the midterm elections. So I think Vice President Pence will be placed in these strategic congressional places where it makes sense to send Mike Pence to go to.
David, I gotta end it there. I'm getting the wrap from our producers. David Goodfriend, Mercedes Schlapp. We will have you back again. Thank you both.
Thanks.
Well, it was a tough weekend for PGA star Tiger Woods. Picked up on the suspicion of DUI, but he says alcohol wasn't involved, and now the police agree. So what exactly happened, and what could it mean for all the endorsements he still has? Details ahead in the live report.
I was sad. I'm a huge fan of Tiger Woods. Hopefully he can make a comeback.
Called 2.
Let's check out what's ahead on Outnumbered, top of the hour. Harris and Sandra, what do you have?
Love the energy. I know, right? Happy Tuesday. Today, for the first time, the United States will try to shoot down an intercontinental missile like the one North Korea is developing. What can we expect, and how much is riding on this test?
Plus, we are awaiting a White House press briefing with Sean Spicer, the first since President Trump's first trip overseas. This as we are learning about an aggressive new communications strategy from the White House.
I can't wait. We're back. It's Tuesday at noon. Outnumbered. And our hashtag one lucky guy sitting to my left. See you then. Thanks, John.
We'll be watching. See you then. Some new information for you on the arrest of golf legend Tiger Woods over the holiday weekend. Woods faces charges of DUI after police found him asleep at the wheel along a Florida highway. And the law is now backing up Woods' own statement that there was no alcohol in his system. Steve Harrigan live in Miami with an update for us. Steve?
That's right, John. Tiger Woods, the former world #1 golfer, said there was no alcohol involved in this incident. The police report says there was no alcohol involved, and yet Monday, 3 a.m. by the side of the road near Jupiter, Florida, just a few miles from his home, Woods was found alone inside his Mercedes. The car was on, the lights were on, the brake lights were on. The car was stopped, but Woods was asleep. The officer who woke him said he appeared confused and not sure where he was or how he got there. Woods blamed medication from a recent back surgery for the confusion. He said, "I understand the severity of what I did, and I take full responsibility for my actions. I want the public to know that alcohol was not involved. What happened was an unexpected reaction to prescribed medications." Now, Woods' tightly controlled image of invincibility was really shattered in 2009. That's when he was chased from his house by his then-wife. Amidst a series of allegations of infidelity, he crashed into a fire hydrant there and has really been on a downward spiral ever since. He's had a number of surgeries, both on his left knee and his back, and hasn't won in quite some time. His ranking has fallen below 800 on the charts. Woods, though, is credited for single-handedly changing the game of golf. He brought new viewers to the TV. He brought huge purse money. He even changed the way golf courses had to be designed because of his power. He said he wants to come back once this surgery heals. John, back to you.
All right. Thanks very much, Steve Harrigan in Miami.
Well, new next hour happening now. We await the White House press briefing, the first since the shakeup in the White House communications team. Also, we take a walk through history and learn about the family connection to this home and a very prominent former First Lady. We'll explain coming up next hour on Happening Now.